Also auf jeden Fall geht es hier jetzt in den kommenden Momenten rasant zu. Es geht um die Formel 1, Drive to Survive, wie die Formel 1 wirklich tickt und was sich daraus lernen lässt. Und dieser Sport führt uns ja immer wieder vor Augen, was es bedeutet, agil zu bleiben, Wandel anzunehmen, Wandel zu gestalten, schnelle Entscheidungen unter großem Druck auch zu fällen. Und darum geht es jetzt. Es geht darum, wie führt man ein Team, welchen Zeithorizont hat man, wenn es darum geht, ein gutes Auto zu etablieren. Und ich freue mich sehr, darüber zu sprechen mit Otmar Szafnauer, dem Teamchef des Formel 1 Rennstalls BWT Alpine, und Peter Lauterbach, dem CEO vom Sporttotal. Herzlich willkommen. Very warm welcome to you. You here. Wir werden an dieser Stelle ins Englische wechseln, da die beiden.
Are we sitting?
Ja. Otmar hat ja viele Jahre in den USA verbracht und lebt jetzt in England, und auch Peter verbringt sehr viel Zeit in den USA, und deshalb werden wir das jetzt auf Englisch machen. It's really interesting. When I started preparing this talk, I was thinking about what an interesting combination. The two of you are up here on stage because you do things that are so different on your day-to-day basis. So maybe you could kind of share with us your mutual history, how you got to know each other, and how you got to establish such a deep respect between each other.
Peter, do you want to go first, or should
No,
I?
please go first.
Because if I go first, you will probably contradict what I say. So
That might be correct.
if you go first, I can contradict you. So
That's
why don't
always
you go
better.
ahead.
Please start.
Now we met at I think at the turn of the century. So we've known each other for probably 23 years now. I met Peter when he was about 10 years old. He's just turned 33. And we met in the paddock in Formula One, actually. And Peter was working as a journalist at the time, and I think I was the vice president of Honda Racing. At the time, Honda hadn't owned a team, but were in the process of buying British American Racing when I first met Peter. So a long time ago, and we've known each other, and our paths from Formula One have diverged, I think, things now. But not knowing how to do anything else, I stayed in Formula One.
So obviously, if you're still in contact, that must mean that you respected Peter.
Oh, absolutely.
How did he earn your respect?
Yeah, great respect. He did a great job when he was in Formula One, and you know, a lot of people come and go in Formula One. There's a lot of them that I've worked with in the past that I don't see anymore, but because Peter is such a good human being, we kept in touch.
So what's your version of the story?
It's totally different.
I knew it.
First of all, you have to say that Otmar probably on those 300 meters of good and bad is everything good. So he's a very humble, very nice person. He has German roots. We met when we both were, Vice President Honda was big already. Me was a very young reporter at Sky Television at that time in the pay TV. So the important guys were the RTL guys, and we were the pay TV boys. And Otmar was always there, always respected. And when we just met Sepp Vettel behind the scenes, we were discussing that every Sunday there was a caterer from Austria, Joshi Walch. He owns the Rote Wand in Zug, a great hotel. And he was inviting Otmar and me sometimes, and other German-rooted people behind the BMW Sauber Hospitality to give us some Weisswurst on the Sunday mornings. And also some beer. Otmar likes beer. Even though he's a Formula One team boss, he drinks sometimes, when he's not racing, a beer. So that's the German side that connects us very, very much.
Have you tried an alt beer?
A which beer?
Alt beer? It's a specialty from Düsseldorf. The dark.
I like a Helles, and from around here, a Kölsch. which is also
That's
pretty
because we are in Cologne. Thank you.
So maybe, Peter, you take him for an
Thank
Altbier
you. Yeah,
tonight
yeah.
in the Düsseldorf Altstadt, which is also quite
He will leave because he
inexperienced
has
these
to
days.
race. He has to race on the weekend.
Yeah,
so he's
so
only here
no
after his
Altbier.
podium
Okay.
in Monaco.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
And,
Impossible.
I need to start with that. Please
a
give him
great
applause for Monaco. Yeah, I think that was a nice idea. Because who in this room would have thought that the team would do so well in Monaco?
No, thank you. Monaco was a good result for the team, and Esteban did a wonderful job. And I was saying to Peter earlier, although it was a podium finish, it was deserved. It wasn't like Olivier Panis when he won in the Ligier, where only 5 cars finished. All the cars finished. We were competitive. We did a good job in qualifying to start 4th. We got a little bit lucky with Leclerc having a penalty. I think he blocked Lando Norris. And at Monaco, it's very difficult to overtake.
Yeah, it's a very...
Although the weather conditions changed that a little bit, and we had to get the strategy right as well, and make sure that the drivers did a good job and didn't hit the wall or spin off, and it all went to plan. So a podium was well deserved by Esteban.
And it also has a very special atmosphere to it. I think the race in Monaco is...
Yeah, Monaco's a special place, absolutely. And to win in Monaco or to be on the podium it is a special thing. And we cherish the moment, but unfortunately or fortunately for some, we have a race this weekend in Spain. So cherishing the moment was very fleeting. It was short for the mechanics and the engineers because we had to pack up and drive over to Barcelona.
Now, tell us what changed between Monaco and the other races and the serious talk there was from...
Well, in Formula One, you don't change things that quickly because, we always work on improving the car. So all year round, you make improvements over the winter, which are significant improvements because you change the architecture of the car. And then during the year, we make further improvements with the architecture that we have, mainly around aerodynamics. So although we did upgrade the car in Monaco, we also had some upgrades in Imola, but Imola didn't take place. But those upgrades were already thought of about 6 to 8 weeks beforehand, because we do simulations, both computer simulations as well as real-world simulations in the wind tunnel. And then once we are happy that the upgrades actually work like we think they should, then we start designing them and making them into real car parts. And that entire process can take up to 2 months. So that was planned long ago. So though it looks like it changed from one race to the next, not necessarily.
Maybe we can talk a bit further down in this conversation about the mentality you need to race, and especially when the pressure gets more and more intense, and how you deal with it, and how also maybe you train your team members to deal with it.
Well, the pressure is different for different people within the team. If you're a driver, you have certain type of pressure, and you'll need to learn to live with it and to thrive from it. And team members, some are the same. If you're part of the pit stop crew, you too have pressure for that 2 seconds that the car is stopping.
Yeah.
And then if you're an aerodynamicist or a design engineer or a race engineer, the pressure is a little bit different and it's not as acute. But I heard a smart person once say that pressure can create diamonds, but it can also burst pipes. Mm-hmm. So we have to be able to put pressure on to a certain level so that it creates diamonds and it doesn't disrupt what we're doing. And that's the key to adding pressure to an organization.
I like that because it kind of depicts the thin line you're walking on with regards to pressure and success. Now, you're in a completely different business now, or in a completely different function than when you met Otmar. What has Formula One taught you for your business, and what's the meaning of Formula One outside of the sport?
To be honest, it taught me about everything. We say that Formula One is a pool of sharks, And it's true in a way. I mean, Otmar is the guy who's leading a Formula One team for the longest time of all the other guys. He's much longer in that circuit. No, he doesn't look like, but it is. And he made like this crappy Indian team, a number 4 team, Force India. He made it sell to Aston Martin. He created Aston Martin, a car that Alonso now wins races with or gets second like every second race. And now he's at Alpine, and he will make them successful, I would bet today. So the thing is, if you are humble, and even though all those big, bald guys in Formula One with the private jets and the glamour and the nice chicas around them, that's one side of Formula One. You can watch it, and you always have to understand it's not me. I'm not part of that. I'm just working here. That was a misunderstanding that Otmar, in my point of view, many working in Formula One forget that they are only a little wheel in a big wheel. And you can, at the same time, you can learn how you can be like super successful if you don't burst pipes, if you create diamonds, if you have a longer breath than others, if you work a little bit longer and harder than others, like Michael Schumacher did in the garage. Every night he was the last leaving the track. And that makes the difference. At the end, that makes the difference.
I find it so interesting that both of you are using the word humble and are bringing a discussion about being humble to the table this afternoon, because I sometimes have the impression it's what has become very difficult nowadays because everybody is expected to step forward and kind of step into the spotlight. We have social media. It's all about selling yourself. So this idea of, coming to a stop again and again and being humble, how does it fit into these current times? And what do you do to really emphasize in your team how important it is to stay humble?
So to me, I lead a team of over 1,000 people now. It's not a small team. And when you can't do every job yourself, as well as the 1,000 team members can do their jobs themselves, you have to respect them for what they do. So you have to respect the individual, but as a leader, you have to make sure there is no ego. We all have egos, we just have to be able to manage that. Be humble, be respectful, and be honest. And that will create a culture within the team that you want. And that culture, that software of the team, so to speak, that culture of working together for one aim, for one goal, and for us, that's doing the best we can on track, ultimately winning, although we're not there. We just finished third, and we thought that was a big accolade. But, we have to do a little bit better to catch Red Bull this year, overtake some of the ones that are ahead of us. But it all comes down, to me, to culture, and the culture that a leader creates. And if you have that ability to be humble, then you get the culture you want a little bit quicker. And for us, that has to be a winning culture. All of us pulling in the same direction, having psychological safety at work, being able to take risk without the fear of repercussions from your boss or your leader. And when you make a mistake, being able to raise your hand and say, I made the mistake, but I'm going to learn from it, and we're going to be better off tomorrow. And the leader needs to be able to do the same. Raise their hand and say, you know what, I'm not perfect. I made this mistake, but tomorrow I'm going to be better. And it's about creating that culture. And the bigger the team is, the more important that culture is.
So as a leader, you also have to be willing to show your own vulnerability?
If you don't show your own vulnerability, it's read by the people who you're leading. And they're usually smarter than you are. So you just have to be honest.
I'd like to ask both of you, because I assume, Peter, since the two of you get along so well, and you were also talking about being humble, that there might have been a situation that taught you what it means to be humble. And I was wondering if both of you would be willing to share who or what situation taught you how to be humble.
I can remember this, and pardon me if I go first, because I don't want to forget it.
Please.
When I graduated from We moved from communist Romania to Detroit in 1972. So if I take a half step backwards, my father being American of German descent and my mother being Romanian. And when I graduated from university with an engineering degree, before my first day at work, she said to me, before you go to work, I want to tell you that I too work with graduate engineers. And just remember, you'll work with some people who don't have engineering degrees, but never discount what they know, because often they'll be smarter than you, but without engineering degrees. So respect them for what they know and learn from them. And she then looked at me and said, I have a 5th grade education. You're now a graduate engineer from university, and I'll always be smarter than you. So don't forget that. And she taught me that from a young age, and she was right. And from that day forward, I respected everyone that I worked with for what they know and never looked down on them for what they don't know.
That's very impressive.
It's true.
I think everybody needs
true.
to let that kind of
I
sink
can't
in and
add
reflect on that. I have to
Exactly.
admit, I have goosebumps.
I can't add such a great story.
That's a true story.
I know. I have it.
That's all right.
I don't know. I just had a look at Otmar and became humble.
I mean, you know, what a nice compliment to know that you make an impact on so many lives, isn't it?
Yeah, it's, I mean, Peter's a great guy, otherwise I wouldn't be here. He asked me to come, and, you know, I mainly came for the audience, but a little bit for Peter.
Yeah, I was begging hard.
When we were preparing this discussion, and we were kind of brainstorming on what questions would be nice to have, you know, one comment was, ask him how he deals with change, and how to make the most with means that might not be comparable to other teams' means with regards to the financial budget. So the question was, how do you take your team further and further, but perhaps with financial constraints? So
the way we do that is everyone has the same task in Formula One. We all want to do the same thing, and we're all governed by the same technical regulations. We're all governed by the same financial and sporting regulations. So the trick is when you don't have as much as the others do, and especially in infrastructure, perhaps money, and perhaps some human talent sometimes as well. We're not all equal. What you have to do is focus on the items and the areas where you gain most performance most quickly. And make sure with the resources you have, you do those first and foremost. And the stuff that is secondary or tertiary, do those last, or do those when you suddenly have the resources. But sometimes people get lost and they get the first order stuff. And they start looking at second or third order things and spending too much time there. So we just focused on the big things that it takes to go quickly. So Peter mentioned Force India. And Force India, we didn't have a lot of money. But one thing we always did, because it's one of the 4 big topics of going fast on a racetrack, is we made sure we had the best drivers that we could. You know, so that's a huge importance. And so often, teams with lesser money would take lesser drivers because they brought money. And that was a fallacy. So we always went after the best drivers we could. And then the rest of the money that we had, we also looked at first order stuff first, and then if we could afford second and third order. So it's a pretty simple formula, but not everybody got it right.
Formula One is a very dynamic environment. You know, rules change, the technology changes quickly. What other sports, and you deal with many other sports in your job, in your day-to-day job, Would other sports benefit from this?
I think other sports, that's why I thought it was such a nice idea, and thank you again, Otmar, to come. It's such a nice idea to listen to what they do. I mean, it's one of the biggest sports in the world, probably the biggest we have. And it's not so common here in Germany, you know? And if we have a look on what they do, especially in telling stories now, I mean, I was there as a reporter when it was the time of the petrol heads, like we were watching the races and it was about 52 laps and lap time average and working on which lap on the car and stuff. It was so different to what it is today. Now my wife and my 3 children watch Drive to Survive with me. Yeah. They tell the story behind Formula One so everybody can be interested, everybody understands it. Certainly it's like the truth is a little bit over-narrated. The sounds are totally like plastic, but they are great. It's not the true sounds, but they make them great. And it makes the sport, like you can feel it. And now they made breakpoint for tennis, they made full swing for golf sport. So they started it off, and Liberty did a great job in telling a story behind this Formula One. What did they pay like 8 years ago from Bernie? 7-8 billion to get Formula One?
8.
8. So now there was an offer on the table from Saudi Arabia of, I think, over 20 billion within not even a decade. They doubled, tripled the sport value. And we can have a deep look on that because I realize that it's still a big issue that in Bundesliga, for example, we are not in the cabins. We don't have sound. We don't have cameras. We are like the true people. But it's like we have to tell stories. Otherwise, it's not going to be super big.
How important is the additional content around Formula One racing? I'm asking because we had a panel before which touched on how social media has been changing the perception of the sports and how about creating the content in a different way to make it interesting for younger viewers. So what is your take on that and those developments and the new technological abilities also that you have to promote this sport?
Maybe that's for you.
Well, one thing that both Drive to Survive, Netflix, and Liberty Media has done for the sport is to fill the gaps in between the races. So, and if you fill the gaps with content that makes you look forward to the next race because of what happened at the last race, with some of the rivalries that are happening, even though Red Bull, for example, is winning everything this year, there's still the rivalry between Max and Sergio and some of the others wanting to win races, Mercedes trying to come back and have their resurgence within the season. You know, Alpine now being 5th, wanting to be 4th. How are you going to do that? If you tell those stories in between the races, then it makes the race more exciting. And I think the other thing that's happened recently is through Netflix, the fact that we have a great sport sometimes was a well-kept secret. And Netflix is now a media where they've told our well-kept secret to the world. And that has brought on a bigger audience. And because of the bigger audience, this stuff that happens in between also has a bigger audience. And therefore, it's in people's minds for longer, for the entire season. The one thing with Formula One is we don't have, I don't want to say a lot of content, but we don't have a lot of TV time because we have 2 hours of racing on a Sunday, and maybe we have 8 hours every other weekend or 24 weekends a year. If you compare it to football, you know, how many games are there just in the Bundesliga? You can watch, and that's just the Bundesliga. There's Champions League, there's
Premier League.
So if you just look at how much content football has versus Formula One, it is significantly more, orders of magnitude more. So the little bit that we have, we got to make sure we do a good job. And I think both social media and Netflix have helped with that. And I think our sport has grown in popularity. And now when you watch it on a Sunday, you enjoy it. Even Monaco, where the racing isn't great, I heard lots of, maybe that was a bias because, but a lot of people said they enjoyed the race.
And Tommy Maguire's there. He comes from Cannes, so you have a bit of Hollywood faces around. They will be part of the Netflix stuff too. And people like Günther Steiner or Haas team who have been and are totally irrelevant for, well, that's mean. I don't mean it mean, but they are like the last of the last since always. And it's okay, but now they are stars because of a Netflix series. Now Günther Steiner gives autographs at the gate. He never did. Nobody realized him. Otmar is one of 10 superstars. He's one of the 10 leaders of a Formula One team. And you know, it's like we are talking about Manchester City, Barcelona, Madrid. He's one of those. And it's like, or he's leading one of those. And it's funny to look behind the scenes and to see what storytelling can make a difference and how important it is to, you know, look behind the scenes. I think that's very, very key.
And Hollywood have come to us now. In Silverstone, they'll start making a movie.
No.
Yeah. I'm not...
Is it a secret?
I don't know. I was just thinking, they didn't say keep the secret.
What can you do?
Anyway.
I mean, if they don't say, it's out now. So Hollywood makes a film.
F1 movie starring Brad Pitt, but if it's a secret, it's out now.
It's out now.
Can somebody check really quickly on their phone whether it's a secret or not, whether we have some exclusive content right now up here?
It would be amazing. Amazingly embarrassing for you.
Yeah, I hope it was. No
Peter,
one said don't say.
Our time's almost run out. I wish we could speak for so much longer. You just mentioned storytelling, and I'm very keen to see what storytelling will surround the green transformation of the Formula One.
The green?
Green transformation.
What is that? No, I'm joking. It's okay.
Well, carbon neutral by 2030.
Yes.
I think we're making good strides. 2026, the fuel that we will use will all be synthetic. It won't be, and it will be from plants that humans and animals don't eat. And the plants will ingest as much carbon dioxide as the cars put out, so it would be truly carbon neutral. So
and that's a big deal. And by the way, Formula One always...
It's a big deal because if we can do this in Formula One, we can also do it for the 2 billion internal combustion engine cars that are out there, and we won't have to scrap them.
Okay,
which means we don't only need electric cars.
Exactly.
That's a very important aspect.
We could do both.
Well, you know, with regards to electric cars, I always wonder where are we going to get the electricity from for all those electric cars?
So electric
and for everything
cars
that transformed to being
they're
electrically
great
powered.
if the electricity can come from solar power. But if you're just moving the pollution to outside the city, it's not great. So if it can all come from solar power, great. However, what do you do with the 2 billion internal combustion cars that are already out there? We can't scrap them all. So if there's a fuel that is totally carbon neutral, I welcome it.
And Formula One always has been leading in that, always. Hybrid technology, they were the first. Getting like energy from braking, they were the first.
Energy from exhaust.
Exactly. So it's an important sport for the whole automotive industry because it's the pinnacle of engineering art. Always has been.
So our time, unfortunately, is up, and I don't...
I wonder who the next presenters are, because there's a lot more coming in.
It's me. I'm going to be the next presenter, the next thing on the agenda is actually an award for sustainability.
Okay.
You just
so
won
you might want to stay for that one, which is very nice. But anyway, I can't let you go.
I want to say thank you for the audience for listening and for coming. Your time's probably the most important thing to you. And for you to take the 20 or 35 minutes that we had together, for that I want to thank you. Thanks very much.
I have one last question. For both of you. And the question is, We've talked about change, we've talked about sustainability, we've talked about how innovative the industry is. What do you personally do in your function as a leader to make sure you remain innovative and your team remains innovative?
Start.
You want me to go first?
Please.
I read a little bit, not too much, but
Like
I read.
a little bit is how much?
Well, a book a month on how do you innovate. There's lots of people that talk about change, about how you go about instilling change. I mean, humans are resistant to change, and if you don't change and innovate, you don't survive. So I try to read a little bit, and there's things I learned, like species in general. Those who collaborate and innovate survive. Those that are selfish die out. So I just try to have a bit of understanding about organizational structure and how you take people forward. And yeah, you learn some things. So and then my learnings, I tried to give those learnings to the people that work for me as well. So I'll give you an example. On my desk right now, there's 10 books of De Bono's theory on creativity. So I'm going to give those to mainly the aerodynamicists and to have them read on how Dr. De Bono, who was an Oxford professor, his philosophy on innovation and creativity. Because ultimately for us, it's engineering, but it's creative engineering. And you almost have to be, when you're good at Formula One or creating a car that goes quickly, both sides of your brain have to be pretty good. The technical side and the creative side. And when you get that together, those are the people that excel. And these days with 1,000 people, we all have to have a little bit of that. So I try to read a little bit, learn a little bit, and then the learnings that I think are important, I try to get the others to understand too. That's it.
Sub-question. Do you have a book you would never part with?
Pardon?
Do you have a book you would never want to part with?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I have a book of short that, and I tend to forget jokes.
Yeah, me too.
But I think a big part of life is enjoying and having a sense of humor. And I always tell people that the thing I'm most happy about in my life is that I was born with an optimistic outlook. So 98% of the time when I'm walking around, I'm happy. And that is, I don't think learned. I think that's inborn. And I'm so lucky to walk around in life mainly happy. And part of that is my little joke book.
I think we join one thing. I now know you for a little bit, so we don't take ourselves too serious.
No.
And that for me is key in leading. If you always respect the better idea in the room, if you never overrate your position, never come from hierarchy, come from intelligence, work hard, try to form the team, make mistakes, say sorry. That is basically what makes our team, which is much less. We only have 110 employees, so a tenth of your management work. But I only have 7 that are reporting directly to me. I think that is super important, that you don't go into every micro detail and believe in the leaders you have amongst you and in your team. And then just try to be a nice guy. Don't be a ass. Arschloch.
Okay.
Anyway, one last thing before I go, and then we'll go. I learned this at university, and a professor of mine once said, why should you listen to the lonely dissenter? Why should you listen to the one guy in the room that has 180-degree opposite idea? Do you know the answer to that is?
You know, my approach is I don't like nasty surprises. I like to be prepared, and 80% I think of the surprises are predictable surprises. Does it have something to do with that?
No, the reason you should listen to the only dissenter is because he or she might be right.
Which be the...
And the rest of you might be wrong.
Yeah.
So listen to everybody. And to me, that's key. And if you listen to everyone, you got to have respect for them. So
True.
listen to the lonely dissenter because he might be right. And I do that too. I mean, they're often wrong, but they might be right.
But you don't want to miss the one that is right.
Exactly.
And that prevents the nasty surprise later on.
Exactly that.
Thank you for these closing remarks.
Thanks for listening.